Well, hello, fourth grade. So I hope you had a great Easter. I know I did. And I hope that you were able to do some math fact practice yesterday. I did not give you anything to do in your book because I was hoping that you would take the time to either practice your multiplication tables or do some work on apps or websites or flashcards. I told the third grade about some games that I played this weekend and played today with some of my kids that you could use for your math practice, so that you don't have to just use flashcards or practice your multiplication tables on the paper. So one of the games that I played with a few of my kids this weekend was Trianimos. Okay, so in Trianimos, you not only have to find trianimos that match up with each other, you also have to add all of the numbers together. And then you also have to be able to keep track of all of your points. You have to add your points together, subtract when you have to pick tiles out of the pile, and also be able to add everything up at the end. So there's a lot of math in Trianimos. I did not win, so that was disappointing, but it was still a lot of fun. Today I played a few games with dice with one of my daughters, and the first game that we played, we would each take turns rolling the dice and have to multiply the two dice together, and whatever the product was, which is the answer to a multiplication problem, whatever the product was, if it was even, I got a point. If the product was odd, she got a point. And so at the end of the 15 rolls, we added up who got more points, and again, it was not me, but it was still fun. And another thing that you can do with dice is not just do odd or even, but you could just roll the dice and do the products of the two dice and then add all of the products together, and whoever gets a higher answer at the end of all of the products wins. Or you could even take 4 die and roll them and do the product of one set and the product of the other set and add them together. So there's a lot of things that you can do, so you can add more and more math inside of it. So those are just a few ideas of some things that you can do without an app, or you could just do with some die, but there's lots of games that you could make up. So I want you to get creative and make sure that you are definitely using Mondays as a math Monday and not just saying, I have the day off, because you don't. All right. So today's lesson is all about the 6 steps of division. Now, if you close your eyes and in your eyes look at the board at the front of our classroom, you will see a big chart that has the 6 steps of division. I wish I had taken it with me, but I did not. So I just simply wrote it on lined paper. So when you're doing a division problem that has 2 or more numbers in the dividend, you're going to divide it using the 6 steps of division. Now, the first 2 steps go together, okay? The first 2 steps are estimate and divide. So you're going to say to yourself, about how many times does the divisor go into the dividend, into the first number of the dividend? If it can't go into the first number, then you say about how many times does it go into the second 2 number, the 2 first numbers, okay? So once you estimate, then you divide. Now, it's not always going to go in evenly. So you put how many times, about how many times it goes in, then you divide, and then you multiply. So you multiply the quotient by the divisor and put it under the dividend. And we're going to do this together. So if you're getting confused, we'll be doing it together. Then after you multiply, you're going to take the dividend and subtract the number that you just multiplied from each other. And then once you get that answer, you're going to compare that answer with the divisor. If it is less than the divisor, you did it right. If it is the same or more than the divisor, you could have done it 1, 2, 3 more times. Okay? Once you compare and see, okay, I did it right, you're going to bring down the next number. So let's do this together. I'm going to leave those 6 steps right there so that we can do this together. All right, let's do the number, let's do 82 divided by 3. Okay, so let's start with our first step. So I'm going to say to myself, about how many times does 3 go into 8? I'm always going to start with the number closest to the divisor. About how many times does 3 go into 8? Okay, well, if I know my multiplication tables, I know that 3 times 2 equals 6. Okay, 3 times 3 equals 9, so that would be too big. So I'm going to put the number 2 above the 8 because that's the number that I'm asking. How many times does it go into it? Okay, so that was my first 2 steps, estimate and divide. Okay, next is multiply. If it helps you, put a little multiplication symbol right there. So then I know I'm going to multiply 2 times 3, and I'm going to put 6 right there under the 8. The more times you do these steps, the easier it's going to get because we just keep doing the same steps over and over again until the problem is over. Okay? So I put it under there, and then my next step is to subtract. So I subtract 8 minus 6, and I'm going to get 2. All right, my next step is compare. So I'm going to compare 2 to my divisor, 3. Is it less than 3? It is. So I can go on to the next step, and that is bring down. So I'm going to bring down the next number, okay? So now I have the number 22, okay? So now I'm going to start the steps all over again. Once I bring it down, I start the steps all over again, and I'm going to do it to the number 22. Okay, so about how many times does 3 go into 22? Okay, well, if I know my multiplication tables, I know that 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 8 is 24, so that would be too big. So I'm going to put 7 right above the 2 because remember, I brought the 2 down. So I'm going to put 7 right above the 2. Okay, so that would be the dividing step, estimating and dividing. So my next step is multiply. So I take that 7 times 3, and that comes out to 21. So I'm going to put it right there. What's my next step? Subtract. Okay, 22 minus 21 is 1. Okay, let's compare. Is 1 smaller than 3? It sure is, so I did it correctly. Okay, so I compare. My next step is to bring down, but there's nothing left to bring down. So that means I have a remainder of 1. Okay, you're not always going to have a remainder, but sometimes you will. All right, so my answer is 82 divided by 3 is 27 remainder 1. All right, so let's try one more together, and then we're going to turn to the page in our book. All right, let's do 95 divided by 5. Okay, so remember, I'm going to start. My first step is estimate and divide. How many times does 5 go into 9? 1 time, okay? Because 5 times 2 is 10. That would be too big. So I'm going to put a 1 over the 9. So I have estimated about 1 time. 5 goes into 9 about 1 time. And I divided. 9 divided by 5 equals 1. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply. Remember, if it helps you, put the multiplication symbol right there. So 1 times 5 equals 5. I'm going to put it right there under the 9. All right, I have multiplied, so that means my next step is subtract. Okay, 9 minus 5 equals 4. All right, let's compare the 4 to the 5. Is 4 smaller than 5? It sure is, so we multiplied correctly. Okay, so the next step after subtracting is comparing. We did that, and now we bring down the 5. Okay. How many times, we start over right up at the top, estimate, divide. About how many times does 5 go into 45? Well, you know your multiplication tables, and you know that 5 times 9 is 45. So we're going to put a 9 above the 5, because remember we brought the 5 down. 9 times 5, the next step is multiplication. 9 times 5 is 45. So we're going to put it under the 45. Our next step is subtraction. So we're going to subtract 45 minus 45, and that is 0. So let's compare. 0 and 5. Is 0 less than 5? So we did it correct. Okay, nothing left to bring down. So the answer to 95 divided by 5 is 19. No remainder. Okay, so if you can do a problem like this with just 2 digits in the divisor, you can do it with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's all the same steps, no matter how many numbers are in the divisor, or however many numbers are in the dividend, or how many numbers are in the divisor, you still use the same 6 steps. All right, just keep going and keep bringing down and keep comparing and keep subtracting until the problem is done. Okay. All right. I actually saw an awesome trick on the interwebs. You know, I love to find stuff on the interwebs. I found an awesome trick because sometimes it's hard to not get your lines mixed up when you're doing division, especially when it starts getting really long. And so I saw this awesome trick to do your division with the lines going this way so you don't mess up the lines. I'll give you an example. Let's say that we were doing 254 divided by 2. Okay, so I wrote it so that they're each in their own column so that we can bring it down easily and not make it crooked. Okay, so I have 1 times 2 is 2, 0. Bring down the 5, keep it in its column. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract 1, bring down the 4, keep him in his column, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. 7 times 2, 14. And we have nothing left over. But look at that. If you use the paper sideways, we can keep everything in its own column. Is that cool? Do that for addition too, which would be awesome, or subtraction or multiplication. It would make it easy to keep everything lined up. So I thought that was a nifty tip. So I need you to turn to page 380. Oops, sorry. 380 in your book. And it says dividing 2-digit numbers. That's exactly what we were just doing. Okay? So it says, how do you divide with paper and pencil? We're on the top of page 380. Example A, find 76 divided by 4. So if you're estimating it, 76 is close to 80, and 80 divided by 4 is 20. So the quotient is a little less than 20. The quotient has 2 digits, so start by dividing the tens. Okay, so step 1, divide the tens. 7 tens divided by 4 equals 1 10 in each group. We have 4 tens used, 3 tens left. Okay, so 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, so 7 minus 4 is 3. Now, you should be looking at page 380 in your book. Now, look at where it says what you write. Okay. What you write. This is exactly what we just did. Okay, so when I said to you that we start with the number that is closest, that's the tens place. Okay, so that's actually 90. It's not 9, right? When we say that, it's actually 90. So when you're bringing down in the 5, that's actually 50, okay? Or 5 tens. All right, so what you write is 1 times 4 equals 4. 7 minus 4 equals 3. And then you compare. 3 is less than 4. Okay, step 2. Bring down the ones and divide. Okay, 36 divided by 4 equals 9 ones in each group. Okay, so 9 times 4 is 36. And then we subtract. 36 minus 36 and 0. There's no remainder. And we compare. Is 0 less than 4? It sure is. Okay, so how do we check division? Okay, how do we know if we actually got it right? Okay, well, when we check division, we do the opposite, the inverse operation, which is multiplication. Okay, so if 76 divided by 4 is 19, we check that by multiplying the quotient by the divisor. So we take 19 that we just found out, multiply it times 4, and it should come out to the dividend. So what is 4 times 9? 36. Carry the 3. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 3, 7. Okay, so 76. Does it match the dividend? It sure does. So we got that correct. All right. So up on page 381, it says, what if some are left? Well, we've already talked about that. If there are some left, it is the remainder. Okay. Now I want to show you what to do if you get a remainder and you want to check to make sure that you got it correct. Okay. I'm going to show you using, let's see, example B, 83 divided by 3 was 27, remainder 2. Okay, so 27, remainder 2. So we're going to take the quotient, which is 27, multiply it by the divisor, which was 3. Okay, so we have 3 times 7 is 21, carry the 2. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. Okay, so 81 was not the dividend, but remember we had remainder 2. So you take whatever the product is after multiplying the quotient times the divisor, and then you add the remainder to it because that is what was left. So 81 plus 2 is 83. And was 83 the dividend? It sure was. Okay, so that is how you divide using paper and pencil and our 6 steps of division. Okay, all right. I will see you on Zoom in just a couple minutes, and your homework for tonight or for today is going to be practice A odd. Practice A odd. And I will put that in the description of the YouTube video. Okay, see you on Zoom in a minute.